Hey YouTube, Cyber Aquarist here, bringing you part 3 of the series, The Reef. I want to talk about a couple things in this video. I want to talk about adding water for the very first time to your saltwater or reef aquarium. And I want to talk about the hardscape, your live rock, and your sand, or your substrate. Now, there are a couple things you need to take into consideration when you're adding water for the first time. If you're adding live rock that already contains life and beneficial bacteria on it, and or live sand, you're going to want to make sure that your water is set with the proper salinity or specific gravity and the temperature is adjusted and mixing for at least 24 hours before you add your live rock and your live sand. Now that's important because if you add the water to the aquarium that your live rock and your live sand is in and then try to mix the salt, you're going to kill off all the life that's on that live rock and live sand. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can fill up your aquarium with water, your empty aquarium with water, and mix the salt and adjust the temperature. Adjust the temperature first and then add your salt and check your specific gravity and your salinity. Have that adjusted beforehand, mixing for at least 24 hours. Once you know that your specific gravity and salinity is at the right point and your temperature is set, then you can add your live rock and your live sand, thereby preserving the life on your hardscape. Now, there's another way you can do it, and that's to add the live sand and the live rock to your aquarium without any water in it. And you can have a container set beforehand with the proper temperature and specific gravity already set, and then you can add the water to the aquarium that contains your live rock and your live sand. That way the water that you're adding to your aquarium will not be killing the beneficial life on your rock and sand. Alright, well, if you're using dry rock, as I'm doing here, and dry sand, this is the Marco Rocks Key Largo Dry Reef Rock. There is not any life on this rock, and the sand is Tropic Eden's Reef Flakes. This is the Tonga Reef Flakes regular and the mini Reef Flakes. This is not live sand. So what I'm doing is I'm adding deionized water to the aquarium because I risk no chance of killing off any beneficial bacteria or organisms because there aren't any on it to begin with. And I actually prefer doing it this way now. This is the first time I've done it this way because I haven't had a reef aquarium in 18 years. But what I'm doing is I'm using the Aquarium Pharmaceuticals tap water purifier, which is now known as the tap water filter. This actual box is older than a lot of you watching this video. I've had it for 19 years. And guys, don't be deterred by this thing. Back in 1994, Jack Watley personally recommended this to me. You see that it's got his seal of approval. Well, he's the world-renowned discus breeder, and he told me to try it out, and I've been using it ever since. And there's a reason that it's the #1 seller at Drs. Foster and Smith, and that's because it works. Read some reviews on it sometime, and I'm not the only reef aquarist using this item. Check out Reef Thuz, R-E-E-F-T-H-U-Z. That guy has some awesome nano aquariums, and that's what he uses, the tap water filter. Now, it may be necessary that you invest in an RODI unit depending on your tap water. You may have extremely hard water and a lot of undesirables such as phosphates and silicates or pesticides and herbicides in your water if you have a well. So it may be more cost friendly for you to get a RODI unit because you can burn through these cartridges very, very rapidly if your source water is full of contaminants. Now I'm extremely lucky. I'm able to get 150 gallons out of one of these cartridges. They sell the replacement cartridges at most online suppliers for around $19. So I'm paying $19 for 150 gallons of deionized water. Okay, well, By slowly filling the aquarium with deionized water to dry rock and dry sand, there's a couple of advantages. The first advantage is you're starting with a clean slate. You're not introducing any unwanted contaminants, like I said, such as nitrates, phosphates, and silicates. And also you're removing all the minerals so that when I add the salt in here and mix it up, it'll only contain the salts. Well, another thing is, you see how clear the water is? I mean, it's crystal clear, and that's because the water is filling at such a slow rate, it did not disturb the substrate. See, the water is flowing very, very slowly. You see right there at the top, it's just barely making the surface move. And it's actually been filling now for just over 6 hours. Okay, so keep in mind, guys, if you're starting with live rock and live sand, you do not want to do this. You want to mix up your salt water at least 24 hours ahead of time in your aquarium, and then add your live rock and your live sand, or pre-mix it in another container and then add it to the aquarium. Alright, well, I'm going to talk about the Hardscape, show you guys, give you just an overview of how mine is, what I have planned here, and talk about when you're setting up your hardscapes and things that you want to keep in mind. Now guys, live rock, as I've mentioned before, I think in video 3 of my series Nitrates in the Aquarium, live rock is nature's most perfect media. And that's because it allows aerobic bacteria to grow on its surfaces, processing ammonia and nitrite, and it allows anaerobic bacteria to grow deep within the pores, deep within the rock, down inside all the crevices, which will process the nitrates into nitrogen gas. And it's recommended that you add approximately 1 pound for every gallon of your system. This is a 38-gallon aquarium, but with the displacement of the rock, I'm probably looking at around 32 gallons, maybe 33 gallons, and this is about 43 pounds of live rock. So you want to be in that range. Just keep right at one pound per gallon, a little more or a little less, and you can always add additional media, as I've done in this system. I've added 1,087 grams of Seachem's pond matrix. I don't recommend using bioballs in your system because bioballs only allow for aerobic bacteria, whereas a denitrifying media such as pond matrix, or Brightwell Aquatics Export NO3 will allow the anaerobic bacteria to colonize it as well. You don't want things to get out of balance. So, like I said, your live rock is your biological filtration in this system. Alright, when you're stacking your rock, there are a few things you should keep in mind. First thing is you don't want to place your rock directly on top of the substrate and have a gap. In other words, having the sand support your rock. And there's a couple reasons for that, and some fish and invertebrates will dig. Anybody that's kept African cichlids know that they'll dig, and you want to make sure that your rock is touching the bottom glass or on some type of support. Now, in my last video, I talked about using acrylic rods to put these rocks on stilts, and on my Instagram you can see that I've done that. I didn't post all of the pictures of the rock because it was getting late. I was up till 4 in the morning last night, or this morning, working on this. And this rock over here is the one rock that I posted on Instagram, but you'll see that it's not touching the substrate. It's hovering just above the substrate, and that's because it's on acrylic stilts. So if a fish or an invertebrate were to get up underneath that rock and dig, the sand's not going to be the only thing supporting it. It won't collapse, causing my rock structure to tumble down, which could bust the glass or squash a fish. And so this one rock here in the back, it's on 4 acrylic stilts. This rock here in the front, it's on 3 acrylic stilts because it's smaller. And then big piece here, and this piece here are all bonded together with epoxy, and that whole structure is on 8 acrylic stilts. These 2 rocks in the front are on 3 acrylic stilts, and then the rocks on top there are just setting on the supported rock structure. So by keeping your rock elevated just above the substrate, it's not 100% necessary, guys. I'm not saying everybody has to go into that much preparation, but it is worth noting that your flow, when you have a good amount of flow, that it will keep the detritus in suspension, allowing your mechanical filtration to remove the detritus. Because I know a lot of people, you know, in freshwater aquariums or any type of aquarium, you've picked up a rock and moved it, and what's underneath? A lot of poop and detritus. So what I'm trying to do here is keep everything in suspension, allowing it to make it up to the dual overflows and being removed from the system. Alright, the substrate that I'm using, which some of you guys know that, but this is Tropic Eden's Reef Flakes. This is the regular Reef Flakes and the mini Reef Flakes mixed in a ratio of 1:1. Now the reason I did it this way, I wanted the heavier and the larger particle sizes to give the substrate some weight, which will keep the substrate from blowing around, you know, with the Pt.3, which creates a lot of flow. And also the mini Reef Flakes sort of fills in the voids from the larger sizes, which will allow some denitrification to even occur within the media, within the substrate. Now this is a shallow sand bed. This is the type of substrate that I wanted to use. I don't want a deep sand bed because I'm not going to rely on my sand bed to process my nitrates. I don't want any hydrogen sulfide gas to build up in the substrate. I know there are some good arguments for deep sand beds. I'm not saying that a shallow sand bed is the way to go. It's the way that I'm going to do it. And when I do my water changes, I'm going to siphon the sand a little bit to remove any detritus that does get trapped in there. And a note about the substrate too, guys. When I was rinsing this, literally it only took 2 rinses to come clean. I read a lot of reviews that the Tropic Eden Reef Flakes requires very, very minimum rinsing, and it's true. I mean, this stuff came clean after only 2 rinsings, so I'm super stoked about it. We'll see how it holds up in the long run, but right now I like it. It's got some hues of pink, and it's really light, but it's got some of those flecks of pink in it. I really, really like it, and I only ended up using 25 pounds of this substrate, so I've got plenty of it left over. So well guys, anyway, that's about all I want to cover. Just want to show you my Rockscape, what I had in mind here. I left this center part open, sort of like a cave. At first I had just an island here and this island here, but I finally decided to connect the two with the rock on the top, making sort of like a cave. And also, when you're setting out your live rock, you want to make sure that you allow room for coral placement. You want to make sure that you have shelves and ledges, and there's plenty of room. I'm going to come up here at the top and show you. I can place corals all along this shelf here at the top, down in the front, and there's going to be plenty of room for coral placement. And also a thing that I did was I left a big gap here in the back. None of the rock is touching the back wall, which will allow flow behind the rock structure, in the front, through the rock, and underneath. So you want to try to keep your rock structure as open as possible to allow for flow through it, around it, and under it if possible. Okay guys, in the next video I'm going to go in depth about adjusting your salinity and your specific gravity. And as soon as the sump fills up in the back, I'm going to get the MP10 hooked up, and we'll start talking about specific gravity, temperature, and how to mix your salt. So thanks for watching part 3, guys. Looking forward to part 4. Everybody have a good one.